Hare Krishna. So today we're on the part 5 of our Nectar of Devotion portion of the ISKCON of DC Bhakti Shastri course. And we're continuing, we're finishing off the remaining part of chapter 9 that we started last week. And we're going to carry through chapter 11 today. And this is really the various chapters that we're covering right now are kind of continuations of the where Rupa Goswami gives scriptural evidence in support of the various principles of sadhana bhakti that he's given back in chapter 6. So chapter 7, it said there was evidence concerning devotional principles, and we've had different titles since then, but really it's kind of like evidence concerning devotional principles, continued really would have probably been as appropriate as anything else, because we're going through all of those different items. So today, here at the end of part 9 of chapter 9, we're picking up with number 35 of the 64 principles. And Prabhupada calls it submission here in this chapter. And earlier in chapter 6, he called it offering prayers. And so it means that we're making a submission to Krishna, or submitting ourselves to Krishna. Really is how Prabhupada's using the word submission. It's not so much that we're submitting to something Krishna is giving to us and being submissive, but we're making a submission. That's where it's coming from. We're offering various types of prayers, and there's 3 different types of prayers or submissions that are being given here in this chapter. The first one is called Samprarthanatmika, or very feelingly offering prayers, and the different ones are done at different stages of our sadhana. The first and the second one can be done. I think we'll see as it goes along there at different stages. So Samprarthanatmika, very feelingly offering prayers, is in the Padma Purana. There is a statement. This is the example of one. In the Padma Purana, there is a statement of submission in feeling by devotees praying to the Lord. My Lord, I know that young girls have natural affection for young boys, and that young boys have natural affection for young girls. I am praying at your lotus feet that my mind may become attracted unto you in the same spontaneous way. And Prabhupada says this is a material example, but the devotee is praying that he may develop a similar spontaneous attachment for the Supreme Lord, free from any desire for profit and without any other cause. So he said, just like that young members of the opposite gender, or at least who are objects of attraction for them, there's no real cause for it. It's just it springs naturally from themselves. They don't have to learn it. It just is there. So it's that their devotee is asking that a similar type of devotion for Krishna will develop in them. And then there's Dainya Vodika, or humbly submitting oneself, Prabhupada says. And then the example given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is in the same Padma Purana. There is a statement about submission and humbleness. It is stated there, my dear Lord, there is no sinful living entity who is more of a sinner than myself, nor is there a greater offender than myself. I am so greatly sinful and offensive that when I come to confess my sinful activities before you, I am ashamed. So one's confessing one's weaknesses and lack of worthiness. We're thinking that we're unworthy of Krishna's love, and we should be so excited that Krishna cares for us, but we have so many obstacles and blocks in the way. Lord Chaitanya prays like that in the Shikshastakam, that the Lord has been so merciful by giving us, the holy name, which he doesn't. We can hear and we can remember it and chant it any time. There's no hard and fast rules for that. It's filled with all of Krishna's potencies, even so many different names. People have different tastes. There's different names there. And he's just giving it to us. And he said, and Lord Chaitanya, complains about himself. He says, but due to my misfortune, I have no attraction to chanting them, or no real taste for it, no anuraga for chanting those names. So here we are. We're greatly fortunate that Krishna cares for us. And yet, when we've received so much mercy, but yet there are so many things that seem to block our reciprocating Krishna's concern. So there's Dainya Vodika. And Prabhupada says, he comments on this, he says, as far as the conditioned soul is concerned, there is no wonder that he has some sinful activities in his past life, and this should be admitted and confessed before the Lord. As soon as this is done, the Lord excuses the sincere devotee. But that does not mean that one should take advantage of the Lord's causeless mercy and expect to be excused over and over again while he commits the same sinful activity. So in this case and in other places that we'll see in the Nectar of Devotion and that we've already seen, Prabhupada kind of adds little purports. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu itself, they just keep listing these verses generally. But Prabhupada adds a little bit of his own purport to help us, to make it relevant to our case and to help us to understand it. And so he's saying that when somebody does that, when somebody comes before Krishna and regrets their weaknesses and regrets their inability to properly reciprocate with him and take advantage of the good fortune, Krishna excuses that. But he's just like we talked about. With the offenses against the deity worship, by chanting the holy name, the unintentional and offenses that we may do are forgiven, as it said that Krishna forgives offenses against himself pretty easily. But then if we take advantage of that and are careless and just think, well, it doesn't matter, I could do the service any old way, and by chanting I'll be forgiven, then we're committing sinful activities, or in this case offensive activities, on the strength of the chanting of the holy name. It doesn't show any good faith on our part. We're trying to use the holy name in our service. And so the same way here, we may confess and do things before to Krishna, and we take advantage of his forgiving nature. But if we keep repeating them over and over again, and not trying to do better, just taking advantage of Krishna's kind nature, that's not service. We're using him in our service, and that becomes an offense. So we should genuinely try to reform ourselves and pray for help in doing that. The third type of prayer is called lalasamai, desiring some perfectional stage. And the verses here is in the Narada Pancharatra, there is a statement of submission accompanied by the desire for perfection. So this is the example given. The devotee says, "My dear Lord, when shall that day come when you will ask me to fan your body, and according to your pleasure you will say, 'You just fan me in this way'?" So this is desiring like a personal service to Krishna. And so in this case, this would be dasya rasa, the relationship of servitorship. When one realizes something of his constitutional relationship, this is what Prabhupada gives in his purport, he says, when one realizes something of his constitutional relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he understands his original position and wants to be reinstated in this position, either as a friend, servant, parent, or conjugal lover of Krishna. This is called lalasamai, or very eagerly desiring to go to one's natural position. This lalasamai stage of submission comes in the stage of perfect liberation, which is technically called sarupa siddhi, when the living entity understands by perfect spiritual advancement and revelation his original relationship with the Lord. So this is a prayer that's done in the advanced stages of sadhana bhakti and raganuga sadhana bhakti, the latter stages, when one has this understanding of one's eternal relationship. The other two are appropriate for the earlier stages. And this one is more for the very advanced stages. We can pray for the time when that can happen. That would be the first one. And the second one, we can regret our shortcomings that prevent us from advancing. But this type of a desire happens. And Prabhupada says that this is not a selfish desire. Because the idea is, of course, that by doing that, the service to Krishna increases. This is what Krishna wants. Krishna wants us to come closer to him. Krishna wants us to serve him better. So it's not a selfish thing. It's so we want to do that so we can be more engaged in Krishna's service and please him more. And Krishna is satisfied by that. So it's not a selfish desire when you want something for yourself. This is actually to increase your service. And Prabhupada says, Lord Chaitanya also desired that a moment will appear unto me as 12 years of time. Now this wasn't, this Prabhupada adds, I believe, I don't, this is, as I recall, this wasn't part of one of the verses listed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Sometimes Prabhupada also does that. We'll see one later, he adds one from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of course, who wasn't around when Rupa Goswami was compiling this, but it's a beautiful verse and relevant. So this one Prabhupada adds as further evidence. Lord Chaitanya also desired that a moment will appear unto me as 12 years of time. This is the 7th verse of the Shikshastakam. And the whole world will appear to me as vacant on account of not seeing you, my dear Lord. Prabhupada says, one should feelingly pray and become eager to render his particular type of service to the Lord. This is the teaching of all great devotees, especially Lord Chaitanya. And then Prabhupada says, in other words, one should learn how to cry for the Lord. This is kind of famous, people remember this. One should learn this small technique, and he should be very eager and actually cry to become engaged in some particular type of service. This is called lalyam. It's a lala samai comes from that lalyam. And such tears are the price for the highest perfection. If one develops this lalyam, or excessive eagerness for meeting and serving the Lord in a particular way, that is the price to enter into the kingdom of God. So in this case, it really is helpful to see that whole paragraph. Because I've heard people quote this thing, and one should learn how to cry for the Lord. And he says it's a small technique. So in one sense, you say, oh, that's very simple. And I start to do that. But here he's saying that this is connected especially with this lala samai, or the type of prayer that's done in this Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Now, of course, if we're doing the prayer of humility and we really feel it, there's no harm in that. Or if there's no harm in it says we're praying feelingly. But particularly the crying part here, or the learning the technique, he connects here with this lala samai, which is Jiva Goswami says that lala samai prayers are usually offered by those in bhava, but can also be offered by those in Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Remember, this whole section of the Nectar devotion is about sadhana. So these are when one is in the stage of bhava, one is beginning to act in one's, and it's like a bud, it says, Prophet says, it's like a bud that flowers into prema, but one begins to act in one's eternal relationship with Krishna, but usually Krishna is not present before them. So these kind of prayers are typical for somebody in bhava, but somebody in Raganuga sadhana bhakti, and that's going to be relevant here, can take that up. So if somehow you're motivated to cry in prayer, or especially the one of humility, there's no harm in it, but it's not necessarily something we should be cultivating. It's probably above our station. It's not meant just to be. It's not supposed to be an external technique. There's supposed to be some real feeling from the heart there. If somehow that comes, there's no harm. And then 36 is the reciting of notable prayers. So it says in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu itself, it says that Bhagavad Gita is one of those things. Prabhupada says in his commentary, he says like particularly there's prayers like Arjuna gives in the 11th chapter and stuff, but in the actual verse it just says because the Bhagavad Gita is all related with Krishna, it can be considered to be a long stotra or a long prayer. And Prabhupada mentions the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's so many prayers in there. You can find places where the devotees have given, those prayers of Lord Brahma. So many different prayers are there. So in the Nrsimha Purana, it is stated, any person who comes before the deity of Lord Krishna and begins to chant different prayers is immediately relieved from all the reactions of sinful activities and becomes eligible without any doubt to enter into the Vaikuntha Loka. So before we were offering kind of personal prayers, and here that we're offering, prayers that have been composed by great devotees and are there in the scriptures. And it says one becomes eligible without any doubt to enter into the Vaikuntha Loka. We were mentioning this a little bit before, that we see all of the different blessings and benedictions that come from the various aspects of our devotional service. And they're really awesome as you look at it. But again, we shouldn't, just like we shouldn't take advantage of the holy names forgiving us from offenses against in our seva, or against the Krishna's forgiveness when we are sorry for our shortcomings. We shouldn't just think that we now have it made. And okay, well, I've recited prayers, I've seen the deity, I've done all these many things, and so I seem to be guaranteed entry into Vaikuntha. Again, that would be taking advantage of those things. These are part of a continued devotional service. But it should excite us when we see the possibilities here. That so many different aspects of things that we do, just as a matter of course, give such powerful benedictions. And so it should encourage us not to do them in a routine, mechanical, offhand way, but to really appreciate all the different benedictions and mercy we've been given in all these different forms. And usually I said in these cases, things like this they're not exaggerations. It would be an offense to think so. But it doesn't mean that necessarily if someone does this once, that it will happen this lifetime. But it can. It has that power. But generally, it more means that it puts you on that path. It helps you to be on that path that will lead you there. So it's simply a matter of time. And then there's partaking of the prasadam, the food that's been offered to the deity. That's number 37 in the list. There is a specific statement in the Padma Purana. A person who honors the prasada and regularly eats it, not exactly in front of the deity, along with the charanamrita, this is the one that's coming up next, there's a kind of hint at what's coming, the water offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, which is mixed with seeds of the tulsi tree, immediately can achieve the results of pious activities, which are obtained through 10,000 performances of sacrificial rites. So these, the great fire sacrifices, especially if you read them in the Bhagavatam and stuff, are quite elaborate performances. Sometimes there's sages from other planets coming, and the devatas are coming and attending them, and they take usually a king has to sponsor them because they take so much wealth. They're big productions, these big fire sacrifices. But it says simply taking prasadam or the charanamrita equals 10,000 big fire sacrifices. So again, the amount of mercy that's packed into our sadhana bhakti is really hard to fathom, and really should make us enthusiastic. And then I guess that kind of foreshadowed the next one, which is drinking charanamrita, the water that's bathed the Lord. When the pujaris serve the deity, they bathe the Lord, and so the charanamrita then is collected. The nectar from the feet, charan, his feet, as described in the Padma Purana. Even a person who has never been able to give in charity, who has never been able to perform a great sacrifice, who has never been able to study the Vedas, who has never been able to worship the Lord, or in other words, even one who has never done any pious activities, will become eligible to enter into the kingdom of God if he simply drinks the charanamrita which is kept in the temple. In Bhagavad Gita, right, it says that that generally people come to bhakti through the sukrita, pious activities. And that if one's going to be stable in one's practice, one has to perform pious activities in previous lives and in this life. Of course, in the way of pure devotion, and especially in Lord Chaitanya's movement, it's generally given simply by the mercy of the devotees. And there isn't usually prerequisites there. But here, it's a similar thing with the charanamrita. Somebody who doesn't have any qualification for anything, if they're not doing any pious activities, they're even failing to, they're headed downward in life. The next life is moving down in the universe. They're not even following proper karma. And here it says they can be eligible to enter the kingdom of God simply if they have that good fortune to taste the charanamrita. So again, it's just mind-boggling the power in our practice. And so what we need to do, of course, is to avoid what we heard about in chapter 8, the offenses. That's what's holding us back. We have so much power on our side, but we're making offenses against the holy name, and that's holding us back. 39 is smelling the incense and flowers offered to the deity. So we have that opportunity. And then Prabhupada gives a little commentary here to give us a little understanding of the culture. It is a regulative principle that one should not go to see a saintly person or the deity in the temple without any offering. The offering may be very humble, or it may be priceless. Even a flower, a little fruit, a little water, whatever is possible must be offered. So when a devotee comes to offer something to the deity in the morning, he is sure to smell the good flavor of the incense, and then at once he will become cleansed of the poisonous effect of material existence. So it's interesting, he's saying that we should come to the deity, but we should give something. And the other example said that it removes sins and other impurities. And Prabhupada says it can raise one from an impersonalist to a devotee. We have the example of the 4 Kumaras who smelled the aroma of the tulsi leaves that were on the feet of Lord Vishnu and had a similar experience. So again, so powerful. Number 40 is touching the deity. And Prabhupada mentions only one who is properly initiated, who is properly following the rules and regulations, can enter and touch the deity. Not everybody. So this is one that is only open to some people and not others. But it says if they do so, that and one who touches the body of the deity following such regulative principles is immediately delivered from the contamination of material sins, and all of his desires become fulfilled without delay. Prabhupada mentions how Mahatma Gandhi was trying to let persons unqualified to touch the deities, and said everybody was a Harijan, a child of God, and he was saying that because everybody is, but they have to go through the proper purification. It's not a question of being born in a Brahmin caste, but it's a question of being purified by initiation and practice. And then seeing the deity, and there's the verse there mentioning about the verse mentions about especially about Govinda Dev in Vrindavan. Rupa Goswami quotes a verse. And Prabhupada says, this means that even an ordinary person who goes to Vrindavan out of inquisitiveness and by chance sees the temple, especially that of Govinda Dev, even if he is not elevated to the spiritual kingdom, is still assured promotion to the higher planetary systems. So again, no qualification. And so what about us? If we have that opportunity and we're going to Vrindavan specially, and we're going there purposefully, and we see the Lord with some devotion. And Jiva Goswami mentions in his commentary, and I see that Prabhupada, there's places where Prabhupada, when he was translating and making this summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, also had access to Jiva Goswami's commentary. A couple of places I've seen him use things from it directly. We'll see a little bit later on one story that he gets right from Jiva Goswami's commentary on the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's not in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu itself, but it's part of his commentary. Jiva Goswami says that this refers to all deities, but particularly Rupa Goswami is glorifying Govindaji, his very dear deity. But he says so it doesn't mean that if we see the deities in our own temples, that it has no effect. It has a similar effect. But that particular example is given. Rupa Goswami had particular affection for Govindaji. And then 42, observing arati and celebrations of the Lord. And it says, you're seeing the face of the deity during arati frees one from even serious sins, like it says, killing brahmanas and such. And then seeing the deity procession in a festival raises even those with bad qualities, such as the chandalas, up to being associates of the Lord. The word here is svapachadayaha. So it means like the dog eaters and others like that. So because it mentions in the Nectar of Devotion, it just says the dog eaters, the chandalas. And so it's broader, actually. Even it's persons like that who have many sinful, lower birth and many sinful activities. So it broadens it. So we may look at it and say, well, I'm fallen in so many ways. I maybe never ate any dogs, so maybe that doesn't apply to me, but it does. Most of us joined the Hare Krishna movement. We had a sinful background, and so it applies to us. And here it says that Prabhupada explains that in all the different types of festivals, not just Rath Yatra, many times there's some procession with the deity. He mentions that a lot of times Vishnu temples have little smaller deities that are carried around on a palanquin or some kind of thing. So anybody sees that, even if they're very sinful people, they're eligible. They're able to become associates of the Lord. They're raised up to So this is the power of imagine when we have our Rath Yatra festivals and stuff. Anybody who sees that, their future life is changed. And one who sees the worship, just sees the worship, it says gains devotion. Sees an arati going on, or a festival celebrated. So again, these are very, very powerful things. And that completes chapter 9. Chapter 10 is entitled Techniques of Hearing and Remembering, but again, it's really just as appropriate, maybe even more accurate to say, it's continuing with this evidence concerning devotional principles, scriptural evidence concerning devotional principles, continued yet again. Because it happens to mention hearing and remembering. That's the first one here. It covers 43 through 46, and 43 is hearing. And Prabhupada gives, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu gives quite an explanation of it because it's such an important principle. But Prabhupada gives a whole commentary at the beginning of it, of this section. That's his purport here. He doesn't list them as purports, but it's kind of a purport on this section. He says, the beginning of Krishna consciousness and devotional service is hearing, in Sanskrit called Shravanam. All people should be given the chance to come and join devotional parties so that they may hear. This hearing is very important for progressing in Krishna consciousness. When one links his ears to give oral reception, A-U-R-A-L, to the transcendental vibrations, he can quickly become purified and cleansed in the heart. He says, Lord Chaitanya has affirmed that this hearing is very important. It cleanses the heart of the contaminated soul so that he becomes quickly qualified to enter into devotional service and understand Krishna consciousness. And Shravanam, the first of the 9 principles there. So Prabhupada emphasizes that. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.170, it says that the hearing refers to the name. There's three. It says you can hear the name, the pastimes, or the qualities. It's nama, charita, and gunadinam of the Lord. 3 kind of things to hear that are connected with Krishna. And so then Rupa Goswami gives scriptural examples for each of those kind. And so the effect of chanting Krishna's name is, Prabhupada says, when a man is snake bitten, he does not die immediately. The verse talks about this, how one who's been bitten by the snake of material life gets revived. So Prabhupada explains here, he says, when a man is snake bitten, he does not die immediately, but first becomes unconscious and remains in a comatose condition. Anyone who is in the material world is also sleeping, and he is ignorant of his actual self or his actual duty and his relationship with God. Now the so-called dead man, bitten by a snake, can be brought back to life by the chanting of some mantra. Similarly, one can be brought back into Krishna consciousness from the deadly unconscious state of material life by hearing of the Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This was Prabhupada's explanation and like a little purport on the verse that was quoted. And I thought it was very, very clear. We used that instead of quoting the verse exactly. And in hearing of Krishna's pastimes, and this is also Prabhupada's commentary, he says, in this age it is very difficult to follow thoroughly the regulative principles and studies of the Vedas which were formerly recommended. However, if one gives oral reception to the sound vibrated by great devotees and acharyas, that alone will give him relief from all material contamination. If we hear from those who are actually self-realized, then the nectarian rivers, like those which are flowing on the moon planet, will flow into our ears. And the verse that Rupa Goswami quoted was especially mentions hearing from advanced devotees. And then hearing about Krishna's qualities, and this is the verse here that Rupa Goswami quotes. In the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd chapter, verse 15, it is stated, a person who desires unalloyed devotional service to Lord Krishna, who is praised by transcendental sound vibrations, should always hear about his glorification and transcendental qualities. This will surely kill all kinds of inauspiciousness in the heart. And then we have 44, and this is a very important verse and very famous. And there's quite a bit of explanation here given about expecting the Lord's mercy. And the verse that's quoted here is Tate nukampam susamikshamano punjana evatmakritam vipakam ridvagva purbir vidaham namaste jivetayam mukti pade sadayabak. This is 10th canto, chapter 14, text 8, and this is spoken by Lord Brahma to Krishna. And the translation is, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So Prabhupada gives a fair amount of commentary here in the Nectar of Devotion, and we'll look at that. But then I've also I also looked at the purport that he wrote for that verse in the Bhagavatam, and I think it delves a little bit more deeply into it. And since it's such an important verse, Prabhupada even mentioned that. He says, this statement of Srimad Bhagavatam should be the guide of all devotees. A devotee should not expect immediate relief from the reactions of his past misdeeds. he mentions that, and so I thought it was worthwhile because he says similar things, but he explains it in a little bit more detail in his Srimad Bhagavatam purport. So I think it's good to come out with as clear of understanding as possible, since this is such an important verse. And it really, the section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu just is the quotation of that one verse. There's quite a bit of commentary from the acharyas there, but Rupa Goswami just pretty much gives that one verse, as far as I remember. And so Prabhupada gives us quite a bit of commentary, and so it's worth looking into so we understand it clearly. And Prabhupada says, a devotee who is not perfectly freed, this is from the Nectar of Devotion, perfectly freed from the resultant actions, should therefore continue to act in Krishna consciousness seriously. So there's some suffering going on, even though there may be so many impediments. When such impediments arise, he should simply think of Krishna and expect his mercy. Many times, other places, Prabhupada says that when there's some kind of suffering, we should think that this is due to my past karma, and Krishna has very kindly minimized the effect. Otherwise, I deserve to suffer even more. And so we'll look a little bit like that. So he's saying something similar. And then Prabhupada says the exact word used in this verse is dayabak. Dayabak refers to a son's becoming the lawful inheritor of the property of the father. In a similar way, a pure devotee who is prepared to undergo all kinds of tribulations in executing Krishna conscious duties becomes lawfully qualified to enter into the transcendental abode. Okay, so this is what Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Devotion, and it's clear enough. But he goes a little bit further in the Bhagavatam and explains it in somewhat more detail. So I think it was worth it. So I've taken a lot of that purport. There's hardly anything I could skip. And he starts out and he says, Srila Sridhar Swami explains in his commentary, this should be a little encouraging to us, that just as a legitimate son has to simply remain alive to gain an inheritance from his father, one who simply remains alive in Krishna consciousness, following the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, automatically becomes eligible to receive the mercy of the personality of Godhead. In other words, he will be promoted to the kingdom of God. Just has to stay alive, he says. And then he goes on, he says, the word susamikshemana indicates that the devotee earnestly awaits the mercy of the Supreme Lord, even while suffering the painful effects of previous sinful activities. But then he says, Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, this could be a doubt here, that a devotee who fully surrenders unto him is no longer liable to suffer the reactions of his previous karma. So, how are we suffering karmic reactions? And then Prabhupada explains this, however, because in his mind, in the slide here I've put this in bold, it's my own doing. However, because in his mind a devotee may still maintain the remnants of his previous sinful mentality. So generally, if we've committed sinful activities, the mentality is still going to stay with us, even if they've been done in the past. It says, the Lord removes the last vestiges of the enjoying spirit by giving his devotee punishments that may sometimes, he says, resemble sinful reactions. Okay? And then he explains this even further as he goes along, resemble sinful reactions. And he says, although a devotee has surrendered to the Lord's devotional service, until he is completely perfect in Krishna consciousness, he may maintain a slight inclination to enjoy the false happiness of this world. The Lord therefore creates a particular situation to eradicate this remaining enjoying spirit. This unhappiness suffered by a sincere devotee is not technically a karmic reaction, Prabhupada says. It is rather the Lord's special mercy for inducing his devotee to completely let go of the material world and return home back to Godhead. He says, a sincere devotee earnestly desires to go back to the Lord's abode. Therefore, he willingly accepts the Lord's merciful punishment and continues offering respects and obeisances to the Lord with his heart, words, and body. Just lovely. We've talked actually, throughout the Bhakti Shastri course about how Krishna is active in our reformation, and active in helping us, proactive and active in trying to help us advance in devotional service. Back in the Nectar of Instruction, we talked about that one of the ways we have confidence is that Prabhupada Krishna will help us. In Bhagavad Gita, he said how he guides us with intelligence. He gives us the intelligence by which which they come to me. He says that he enters their heart with the shining lamp of knowledge and dispels the darkness born of ignorance. So these are both in the 10th chapter. And he also says that, Prabhupada gives the explanation of how he says, he carries to us what we lack and preserves what we have, and Prabhupada gives that esoteric interpretation in his purport that he brings us, that what we lack is Krishna, and he brings us to himself. And the valuable thing we need to keep is Krishna, and he doesn't let us go away. So that Krishna is active. Once we show an inclination to develop our relationship with him, that he's active. Oftentimes devotees say that we take one step towards Krishna and Krishna takes 100 towards you. So this is one of the ways in which he's active. Sometimes when painful or unpleasant things happen, our default is to think that where's Krishna? Right? He's our friend. Why doesn't he smooth the way? Why doesn't he make life good for us? Right? Sometimes it will challenge our faith. And here Prabhupada is saying pretty clearly, and the Bhagavatam is saying, and the Nectar of Devotion is saying very clearly, that these times when there's suffering and unpleasantness, this is actually Krishna's. It's not that he's angry with us. It's not that he's punishing us because we've done something wrong, and he's dissatisfied with us. But he sees that something is blocking our path. And so these things are actually, he says, Krishna's special mercy to try to get us to recognize and to overcome things that are holding us back from making advancement. So this is one of the, I would say, a very central way that Krishna is proactive with us and helps us. So we need to try to get over that notion that now Krishna's abandoned me. Krishna's not paying attention. Krishna's not such a good guy. When unpleasant and unforeseen and difficult things come to us, but we should try to see what's the lesson in this? How can I grow from this? His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami, when he was terminally ill with cancer, he wrote these meditations down. I think it's the last of the Beggar series. He wrote them down, and he was saying how God doesn't ever make mistakes. And so he was accepting that whatever came was the Lord's mercy like that. He was showing that the attitude that's recommended here in the Bhagavatam and in the Nectar of Devotion. And then he goes on, Prabhupada in his purport, he says, such a bona fide servant of the Lord, considering all hardship a small price to pay for gaining the personal association of the Lord, certainly becomes a legitimate son of God, as indicated by the words Dayabhak. And I really like that, because there was always something about the notion of a rightful claim that I don't know, just rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, because that entrance into the bhakti or entrance into the Lord's abode is something that you can't really earn. It's something that's given. And so somehow I didn't. It didn't sit as well with me as it should. I knew it had, it's there in the Bhagavatam verse. So here Prabhupada gives an interesting, clarifying statement here. That and it's true if you think about it too. If someone is inheriting something, if they're then the father can always disinherit you. So it's a sign that there's some pleasure, that the Father is somehow pleased with you. It's somehow still the Father's mercy that you're included in the will and are not disinherited. And so here it says that Krishna takes you as his son, and so he's pleased with you, and that's why you'll get that inheritance. So it still comes back to the Lord's mercy. But if you do this, you will get the Lord's mercy. But still, there's the Lord's mercy is part of that equation. He accepts you as the son, and and therefore you are entitled in His eyes. In His eyes, you are entitled. We shouldn't think in our eyes we're entitled, but in Krishna's eyes, you are entitled. It's your rightful claim. That's how He sees it. Of course, that makes it true. But we shouldn't see that we have a rightful claim. We should see how it's Krishna's mercy. And with that, I'm fully satisfied. It's not right to criticize the Bhagavatam, so I understood there was something wrong with my understanding there, but I'd always somehow I couldn't understand how that was supposed to be taken. Prabhupada gives a beautiful explanation there. And then 45 is remembrance, and here Prabhupada says some way or other, and if someone establishes in his mind, I made that in bold, someone establishes in his mind, because this differentiates this remembrance from meditation. So some way or other, if someone establishes in his mind his continuous relationship with Krishna, this relationship is called remembrance. About this remembrance, there is a nice statement in the Vishnu Purana. This is what Rupa Goswami quotes, where it is said, simply by remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all living entities become eligible for all kinds of auspiciousness. Therefore, let me always remember the Lord, who is unborn and eternal. And in the Padma Purana, the same remembrance is explained as follows. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, because if someone remembers Him either at the time of death or during his span of life, he becomes freed of all sinful reactions. So more, ever more benedictions from our devotional service. And the next one, meditation. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.178, it defines meditation as contemplation with absorption. So it's a more intense than the remembrance, more involving, more absorption. And it says it can be on the Lord's form, qualities, pastimes, and service. And there's examples for each of those given, quotations from Scripture to support each one of those things. And Prabhupada mentions, and it says that to meditate means to engage the mind in thinking of the form of the Lord, the qualities of the Lord, the activities of the Lord, and the service of the Lord. So this is coming from that verse. Meditation does not mean anything impersonal or void. According to Vedic literature, meditation is always on the form of Vishnu. So the Prabhupada he didn't quote that verse exactly, but he made a comment that incorporated that verse into it. Most of the other verses, he just translates them. And then the first one, meditating on the Lord's form, I have from, a little typo there, meditating on the Lord's form makes a greatly sinful person free from sinful reactions. In the commentary, Jiva Goswami's commentary, it says that casually, that if someone casually meditates, it means not all the time, on the Lord's form. The particular verse quote talked about the lotus feet, but he just said it means any part of the form. Makes a greatly sinful person free from sinful reactions. Prabhupada says a great miscreant, I think, in his translation. And then meditating on the qualities of the Lord, one becomes fit to enter the Lord's abode. And Jiva Goswami says constantly. So you can see there's different levels. So if the meditation is kind of casual, free from sinful reactions, even if you're really sinful, but a deeper, constant meditation, you're able to enter into the Lord's abode. And then meditating on the pastimes frees one from material contamination. And then there's a verse that Prabhupada, I'm not sure if he quotes this verse. I don't think he does in the Nectar of Devotion. He just uses the example that Jiva Goswami gives as an illustration. Meditating in this, Jiva Goswami says, constantly on serving the Lord allows one to attain the Lord directly. I'm not sure if Prabhupada mentions mentions that in the Bhakti Rasamrita, in the Nectar of Devotion. But he includes this story of the Brahman, which appears doesn't appear directly in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but appears in Jiva Goswami's commentary. So this is one place where it's clear that Prabhupada usually, when he was translating the scriptures, he would refer to the various acharyas and their commentaries. And so this is from the I was going to say the Bhavishya Purana, but I may be mistaken. I may be confused there. But there's a story of the poor Brahmin who had heard that you can offer things mentally, perform service mentally. This is about service here, meditating on service. So we had meditating on the form, meditating on the form, meditating on the qualities, and meditating on the pastimes, and then meditating on service. So and that allows you to attain the Lord directly. And this was an example of that was given by this poor Brahmin who heard heard that you can offer things, mentally. And so he was poor, so he couldn't perform elaborate deity worship, but he did so in his mind. It doesn't take any money for that. And he was doing that continuously for a long time. And he would also cook in his mind. And Prabhupada said that one time he was about to offer the sweet rice that he was cooking, and he wanted to touch it to see, because he thought it was too hot. He wanted to test the temperature before it, because it's supposed to be offered cool. Jiva Goswami's account varies a little bit and said that he accidentally put his thumbs in there and was upset that he'd spoiled the offering. But in either case, in his mind, he touched the hot sweet rice. It was in his mind. And when he woke up from his meditation, he had a physical burn. And then when apparently Lord Vishnu was chuckling when he understood that was happening, and he was brought to Vaikuntha. Lakshmi Devi was wondering about what he was laughing about, and they brought him to Vaikuntha, and he remained there as the Lord's associate. So it appears from that. Prabhupada says, the story of the poor Brahmana, shows how the Lord is all-pervading, in spite of his being locally situated in his abode. Although the Lord was present in Vaikuntha, he was present also in the heart of the Brahmana when he was meditating on the worshipping process. Thus, we can understand that things offered by the devotees, even in meditation, are accepted by the Lord, and they help one achieve the desired result. And it seems, from what happened there, that it at a certain level of absorption and concentration, it's no longer just mental. There's a similar story, I think, it was with Lokanath Goswami and his disciple Narottam Das Thakur, that Lokanath Goswami was doing also deity worship in his mind and was dressing the deity, and was having trouble putting on the turban or the mukut, which of course also tells you something. Right? If you're just imagining something, it all works just as you like. And the same thing with the Brahman. If you imagine something, you could just imagine it be cool enough to begin with, and then if it's just in your head, you don't burn yourself physically. And he was having trouble with that. Then his disciple mentioned, that Guru Maharaj, if you maybe turn the turban a little bit, it will fit nicely. And it worked, and then he was shocked at how this other person knew what he was doing. So at some point, the absorption means that you're actually encountering the divine realm. It begins to interact with you. It's not simply a product of your imagination or your thought. So the same way, it becomes real in a sense. And so therefore he became physically burned by it. And even and in this case, and somebody else could see what he was doing. And, so it's the deep absorption mentally, actually allows you to access a certain level of transcendence there, it seems. And then that's the end of chapter 10. And now we have chapter 11, aspects of transcendental service. And these are devotional items 47 through 53. And there's a couple of ones that are kind of intricate here. And 47, we're starting out with is servitorship. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it's 18183, he says that there are two kinds of servitorship. Offering results of prescribed duties, it's a karma arpanam. Arpanam means to offer. And those with an attitude of a menial servant, kainkaryam. Kinkara, this is kainkaryam, means that you have an attitude of a kinkara. And a kinkara, king means what? And kara, so someone who says what? Like, what do you want, my lord? What do you want? So you have a mentality of a menial servant. I do whatever you want. What do you want? And I carry out your order. The two different mentalities. One offers the results of the prescribed duties, and one sees oneself as, that's my existence, as I'm your servant. I guess we can understand from this which one is better and which one is applicable to pure devotional service. And Prabhupada says that in the Skanda Purana, it is said that those who are attached to ritualistic activities, the four orders of social life, and the four orders of spiritual life, the Varna Ashram system, are considered devotees. But when devotees are actually engaged in offering service to the Lord directly, these must be Bhagavatas or pure devotees. So that means the second type. So the one thing that differentiates is that usually you're performing more direct service, and you have this idea of I'm a kinkara, and I say, what, Lord, do you want? And then in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 12186, it mentions that the lesser type of servants have weak faith in bhakti. And the Uttama Bhaktas, on the other hand, the pure ones, have strong faith in bhakti. So that's another distinguishing characteristic of these. Someone who offers the fruits of their activities are accepted as devotees, but they're not Uttama Bhaktas, as which is being described in the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So they have to have they have to have strong faith in bhakti, and that faith we already saw that in Bhagavad Gita means that simply by serving the Lord everything is taken care of. So if somebody doesn't have so much faith, then they offer some results. They think, okay, it's also nice to offer to Krishna, but I have maybe more faith in the ritualistic activities. So bhakti means that you have pure bhakti. Uttama bhakti means that you have that faith that everything can be accomplished simply by serving Krishna. And Prabhupada says, Srila Rupa Goswami describes one who is fit for becoming engaged in devotional service. He says that persons who are neophytes and who have developed a little love of Godhead are not interested in the activities of sense gratification. They have more faith in proportion to their devotion. But if there is still some attraction for sense gratifying activities, then the result of such activities should be offered to Krishna. This is also called engagement in the service of the Lord, with the Lord as the master and the worker as servant. But there's two grades of it. One of them has lesser faith and doesn't have the attitude that I am the servant. The other one says I'm your servant and I have stronger faith. And of course that's what Rupa Goswami has recommended here. So Srila Rupa Goswami accepts as true service that which is done with strong faith and a mood of menial service. Kinkara, I say what? I'm the one who does whatever you want. And then Prabhupada quotes what he translates what's there in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In the Naradiya Purana, there is a statement of how this servitorship is transcendental. It is said that a person who is constantly engaged in devotional service by his body, mind, and words, or even a person who is not practically engaged but is simply desiring to be so, is considered to be liberated. So we're talking about the good kind, the higher level of servitorship. Even by desiring that, they're considered to be liberated. They can gain liberation. So it's very, very powerful. So the others are also considered servants of the Lord, but they're not on that same kind of level. So we should have that faith in bhakti, strong faith in bhakti, and the attitude that I do what you want, Lord. I say, what do you want? I'm a kinkara. That's the attitude of kainkaryam. And then Next one is devotional service and friendship. This is 48. This is also a little bit, also two categories here. Devotional service, Prabhupada says, in friendship can be divided into two categories. The first is to act as the confidential servant of the Lord, and the other is to act as the well-wisher of the Lord. And the second one is the more intimate, actually. Even though, because confidential, it seems to be more related to confidence. In the translation of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it says that you have trust. And you see that Prabhupada will say that when he talks about that first category, he says the devotee who has confidence in devotional service to the Lord systematically follows the rules and regulations with the faith that he will achieve the platform of transcendental life. So there's trust or confidence in the Lord. So the confidential, I think, means he has confidence, is what Prabhupada was intending to say there, more than an intimate servitor. And that seems to be confirmed by how he uses it later on. And Jiva Goswami mentions that the friendship described here is regarding the attitude of a sadhana bhakta rather than the sakya ras that manifests in the higher stages of bhakti. So here we're talking about devotional service and friendship. It doesn't mean like our eternal rasa. That will happen, in maybe high levels of raganuga bhakti. People will start to be motivated that way, or in bhava bhakti and beyond. One has an eternal relationship of friendship. You know who you are. You're one of Krishna's friends. This here means something that's applicable, because we're in the chapter about sadhana bhakti. And so here it says that this friendship means that we understand how Krishna is our well-wishing friend. And we have trust in that. And that's the first level. And then the other level has a little tinge a little tinge of raganuga to it. We'll see. But it's more like that. We understand how Krishna is our friend. Krishna says, I'm the well-wishing friend of all living entities in Bhagavad Gita. So we have confidence in that. Confidence that Krishna is our friend. And so it doesn't mean, we're not talking Sakya Rasa here, so we got to be clear on that, because this is about sadhana bhakti. And then there's two examples given that Rupa Goswami quotes of the first category, the one who's confident and trusting in the Lord's friendship. And the second example is of the first one shows a little bit less faith, and another one shows someone who has really even more faith. And so in the first one, in the Mahabharata, Prabhupada says, Draupadi says, my dear Govinda, your promise is that your devotee can never be vanquished. I believe in that statement, and therefore in all kinds of tribulations, I simply remember your promise, and thus I live. So here she's having confidence in Krishna's well-wish, in his friendship. She's confident in that. Now, people may wonder, because Draupadi is a very advanced devotee. She's not a sadhana bhakta by any means. And Jiva Goswami explains that she's that even though she's on a much higher level than is being discussed here in this part, the sentiments she expressed are appropriate for somebody in sadhana bhakti. We can still learn from that. We're not on her level, but that kind of a mood, that kind of an understanding is appropriate for us in sadhana. So that's why it's quoted. It's not to think that she is on a lower level or that she has less faith, but it's just that it's appropriate for us. So when the troubles are happening, we have confidence in the Lord's protection. And then a similar statement. This is the same thing. There's also somebody who has confidence in the Lord's being our friend and well-wisher. But it's someone who has even a deeper level of faith. A similar statement is there in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, verse 53, where Havi, the son of King Rishabha, addresses Maharaj Nimi. My dear king, A person who never deviates even for a moment from engagement in service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Person. And it says, engagement which is sought even by great demigods like Indra, with firm conviction that there is nothing more worshipable or desirable than this, is called the first-class devotee. Again, there's confidence in the value of serving the Lord. The first one says, I'm serving the Lord and I have full confidence that the Lord is also friendly towards me, and so I have no worries. And here it says, he will not deviate from the service for anything else. So, similar, but there's a little gradation of greater faith. This is what Jiva Goswami says. And then there's a single example of what Prabhupada calls being a well-wisher of the Lord, the more intimate type of friendship that can happen here in sadhana bhakti. And it says, and Prabhupada doesn't quote that exact verse. He gives the essence of it and has a kind of explanation. He says, sometimes it is found that a pure devotee lies down in the temple of the Lord in order to serve him as a confidential friend. Such friendly behavior of a devotee may be accepted as raganuga or spontaneous, although according to regulative principles, no one can lie down in the temple of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spontaneous love of Godhead may be grouped under devotional service in friendship. And again, here, Jiva Goswami says that when we're talking about Raganuga here, it's not full-fledged Raganuga where you understand. Again, that would put us towards Sakya Rasa, where we understand our eternal relationship. But there's what's happening is that the friendship or the feeling of confidence in Krishna has developed to a greater level where we're a little bit more informal with him. And so we're not strictly following all the rules. This was occurring on a higher level, but also I think it was Lord Chaitanya was being served by his servant Govinda, and he was laying down in the doorway, and in order to serve him, he had to step over him, which is considered to be an offense, and he was asking the Lord to please move aside so I can come and serve you, and the Lord said, it all depends on your mind. And so he had the choice. He either had to not serve him, or he had to step over him. So he put a cloth over top of Lord Chaitanya and stepped over him. And then when the service was over, he wouldn't go back out again, because he would be stepping over him not for service. So it says that one can become a little bit more informal, and if the service requires, will violate some of the principles. So it's not super high level Raganuga Bhakti, but it's developing a more intimate relationship, a feeling that that even if you have to do something a little against the rules in order to serve, it's okay, even though it otherwise might be an offense to the Lord. So that's the higher level of this friendship in sadhana. And then Prabhupada gives us something very interesting. He gives us right at the top. He gives us a practical way to become friendly in the well-wisher category, in that second category, where we don't have to break any rules, and where we don't have to be super elevated either. So and this is because of Lord Chaitanya. And he says, in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Lord accepts a preacher as the most dear servant. Anyone who is preaching the confidential message of the Gita to the people in general is so dear to Krishna that no one can be equal to him in society. And he put this right at the beginning, where he defined that second category, the people who are well-wishers. So it was clear he was connected with that. So to me, this is a practical example of how we can act in that way, and we don't have to be even super advanced for that. But we're building a beautiful connection with Krishna, preaching the confidential message of Krishna consciousness, Gita, Krishna consciousness by serving Lord Chaitanya's mission. The next one, 49, is surrendering everything to the Lord. And Prabhupada says this self-surrender is called Atma-nivedana. According to different authorities, self is differently defined, the Atma. Atma is sometimes considered to be referred to the spirit self or soul, and self is sometimes considered to refer to the mind or to the body. Full surrender, therefore, means not only surrendering one's self as spirit soul, but also surrendering one's mind and body to the service of the Lord. And Rupa Goswami gives examples for all of those. And then Prabhupada gives one where all of them are done simultaneously. This is Prabhupada's edition. He gives something from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So the example that Rupa Goswami gives of offering the soul is Sri Yamunacharya, in his prayers to the Lord, has expressed a similar idea in the following words. My dear Lord, I may be living within some body as a human being or as a demigod, but whatever mode of life I do not mind, because these bodies are simply byproducts of the three modes of material nature, and I, who am in possession of these bodies, am surrendering myself unto you. And then the example that's given of offering the body is, my dear Lord, as a souled animal has no need to think about his maintenance and sustenance, so because I have given up my body and soul unto you, I am no longer concerned with my maintenance and sustenance. And then offering everything, this is Prabhupada has added this as part of his commentary. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has sung a nice song in this connection, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared, long after Rupa Goswami. Has sung a nice song in this connection. While offering himself as a fully surrendered soul, he said, my mind, my household affairs, my body, whatever is in my possession, my dear Lord, I offer to you for your service. Now you can do with them as you like. You are the supreme possessor of everything, so if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can give me protection. All authority belongs to you. I have nothing to claim as my own. Both friendship and surrendering everything. Here, this is what Rupa Goswami says, that these two things, the friendship in the previous category and surrendering everything, are rare in sadhana bhakti. Because they're difficult in that stage. They're seen more often in the higher levels of bhakti. So for those of us in the stage of sadhana, unless it's a very high level of raganuga bhakti, we won't see this as much. It's a high level of surrender, a high level of devotion. So it says it's rare to see that, at least in any kind of fully formed way. And then 50, offering a favorite article, and Prabhupada quotes Rupa Goswami's verse there that he quoted in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter, verse 41, Lord Krishna tells Uddhava, my dear friend, if someone offers me the best thing in his possession, or anything which is very pleasing to him, he will be eternally benefited. And Jiva Goswami says there's a word cha, and in the Sanskrit verse that he says also means that we should offer the Lord what the Lord likes. So what we like, and also what the Lord likes. That also covers that. And then 51, performing all endeavors for Krishna. And Prabhupada, he says, in the Narad Pancharatra, there is a statement of how one can act in all spheres of life for the satisfaction of the Lord. It is stated there that a person who is actually in devotional service must be engaged in all kinds of activities, those prescribed in the revealed scriptures, and also those which are accepted for livelihood. In other words, not only should a devotee engage himself in the prescribed duties of devotional service, which are mentioned in the revealed scriptures, but he should also perform the duties of his practical life in Krishna consciousness. For example, a devotee who has a great establishment or factory may offer the fruits of such a material possession for the service of the Lord. So what Prabhupada's saying here, of course, it doesn't mean that you can't be renounced, and it doesn't mean you have to perform things for your livelihood if you're a renounced, high level of renunciant or something. But he's saying that if you're in that situation where you have to support yourself, you're in the proper ashram for that, you should try to make those activities favorable for your devotional service. That's how Jiva Goswami explains it. All activities should be favorable to your devotional service. So Prabhupada is saying he should perform the duties of his life in Krishna, practical life in Krishna conscious. So he should be Krishna conscious about how he performs the duties of his practical life. That's what he's saying. And so that somehow or other, whatever, we may not be able to perform direct activities of bhakti all the time because we have to maintain ourselves, or have families, or we somehow have to earn our livings. But somehow or other, we should make that favorable to devotional service, incorporate that somehow. We talked about in the Nectar of Instruction that we shouldn't, probably shouldn't have some kind of profession that takes all of our time, so that there's no other time left, for devotional service. To endeavor to try to, to reach higher and higher positions if it takes all of our time and energy. So here Prabhupada says you can offer some of the fruits of it also. Like that. So somehow everything we do in life should be in harmony with our devotional service. That's what that means there. 52, being a surrendered soul. And Jiva Goswami says that the Sharanam, this surrender, has two meanings, and the two verses, there's two verses, each one reflects one of those meanings. He says that it means Sharanam can mean taking shelter, and it can be means feeling protected. Shelter and protection. So the shelter, it says, in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, there is the following statement about self-surrender. My dear Lord, a person who has surrendered himself unto you, who is in firm conviction that he is yours, and who actually acts in that way by his body, mind, and words, can actually relish transcendental bliss. You feel, again, totally secure. I've taken shelter of you, Krishna. And then there's protection. In the Nrsinga Purana, Lord Nrsingadev says, anyone who prays unto me and takes shelter from me becomes my ward, and I protect him always from all sorts of calamities. The two are related, and if you feel protected, then you feel, you feel sheltered. You feel you can simply, like, you depend only on Krishna. The two, they're related, but there's some distinction between them. And then the last section is serving things related to Krishna, is the general topic, and serving trees such as the Tulsi tree. And Tulsi is is what Rupa Goswami gives evidence for. And there's a couple of beautiful verses about it. In the Skanda Purana, there is a statement praising the Tulsi tree as follows. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Tulsi tree, which can immediately vanquish volumes of sinful activities. Simply by seeing or touching this tree, one can become relieved from all distresses and diseases. Simply by offering obeisances to and pouring water on the Tulsi tree, one can become freed from the fear of being sent to the court of Yamaraj. Prabhupada says, the king of death who punishes the sinful. If someone sows a Tulsi tree somewhere, certainly he becomes devoted to Lord Krishna. And when the Tulsi leaves are offered in devotion at the lotus feet of Krishna, there is the full development of love of Godhead. And then, in the Skanda Purana, there is another statement about Tulsi as follows. Tulsi is auspicious in all respects, simply by seeing, simply by touching, simply by remembering, simply by praying to, simply by bowing before, simply by hearing about, or simply by sowing this tree, there is always auspiciousness. Anyone who comes in touch with the Tulsi tree in the above-mentioned ways lives eternally in the Vaikuntha world. So that's the end of chapter 11.